And showing 5:30 as authorized by section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. This meeting may be convened into a closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any agenda item herein. City of Rowlett reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or call an executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. The process for public input, if you're not able to attend in person, you may complete the citizen input form on the city's website by 3:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. All forms will be forwarded to the task force prior to the start of the meeting. For in-person comments, registration forms and instructions are available inside City Hall. And I forgot to start this out by saying it is Monday, October 23rd, 2023. This is the meeting of the Community Investment Program Task Force. So, we did have a request to speak this evening. First time I have ever had it, so I'm really excited about it.
We'll see.
And correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. Sharon Buzar?
Hauser, please.
Bowser.
Uh-huh.
Yes, ma'am.
I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous. I reside at 3405 Scott Drive. The neighborhood is called Westwood Estates 2, and we moved there in April of 1981. Since April of 1981, our alley has had no work. I brought some pictures. I take it back. They dribbled some asphalt back in the early 90s, and somebody's driveway collapsed further up the street, and they put some asphalt down a couple of years ago. I have pictures, circulating. They're black and white, I'm sorry. I don't have a color printer. I noticed y'all hired somebody who went around and looked at all the streets and the alleys. And I looked at the report, and our alley was written as poor. And so I've talked to my neighbors, and they asked me to come down and ask you all to please consider working on our alley. Y'all have worked on alleys west of us that are newer neighborhoods. And we're not sure what our little street needs to do to have it looked at, but there is actually lawns growing in the alley. We have significant grass. Driveways are collapsing. The water doesn't really flow down to the sewer pipe. And so here I am asking you all to please think of Scott Drive, west of Rowlett Road, east of Carla, and we run east to west our alley, and we would ask you to please fix it.
Excellent job.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
You're succinct and clear.
Stock drive, Eric, it's been an issue for a couple of CIP agendas. Classically has collapsed curbs, bad drainage, broken roadway, both east and west Scott Drive.
Nice.
Okay,
42 on it.
you're in the new neighborhood.
You were. I'm just looking at something really quick. Let's go to the next step. Okay. If everybody's had a couple minutes to review the minutes. All right. First item is consider approval of minutes from September 25th, 2023 meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review that. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, if none, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And a second. Check. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that carries. All right, next item is discuss, review, and rank streets and alley projects as presented by staff.
Okay, so we did come before you last time and made the presentation. So then, of course, we asked you to do some rankings, and you all have responded I want to thank you for that, acknowledge that you did that. But we also got some feedback that the grouping and the way the way the streets were presented, the alleys were presented, was a little difficult to rank or to comprehend. So we have reformatted the presentation, and that's why I'm here tonight to speak to you all about it. So let me get started. Some of the stuff is basically the same as it was, but the streets and alley portions are a little different. And there are a few other items that we've inserted as well. The first item is the streets that have already been designed. They need funding for construction. This is a repeat of last time. We had the Marion Interconnector, Polo Business Park Phase 2, and Country Air State Phase 2. These total almost $7.5 million. But the streets that we recommend for reconstruction, we had grouped them into neighborhood type streets. We've been told that you would prefer to see a simple list of the streets. So we have this a map of the same map of the streets, but in this case, this is a list ranked from low PCI to high PCI. And as you can see, it shows a length and an associated cost. It's a long list, about 100 streets, totaling, as before, $70 million. And if you'd like, at the end of this presentation, we have a spreadsheet. We can start at the top, and you can decide on a dollar amount that you'd like to spend on these streets, or we can pick the streets from here. We have a spreadsheet that can tally them. Yes. Good.
Jeff, did you not group them with the idea that mobilization costs would be less
Well,
and facilities would be, that they will be done?
that
Simultaneously?
was a consideration of ours, but again, we got feedback generally from the committee that was not what you wanted to see, and so we have now again reformatted this list as a straight list.
What?
So-
Okay, somebody, but not me.
Yeah, not me.
Because I like,
Yeah.
I like. So,
I don't think it isn't to say that, streets couldn't be grouped in a contract. I think the grouping that we've talked about is neighborhood grouping, so doing multiple streets in one neighborhood at a time. But if you were to do different streets across the city, I don't know that you couldn't group those in a contract.
You could. We could try to group them geographically so that they're fairly close and mobilization costs
Right,
could be held to a minimum.
right.
Well, and then I don't know where their request came from, so some of these neighborhoods are phases where we've already had streets done in some. And so these would be some of the streets or neighborhoods of the next logical area to bring that development or neighborhood completeness. Some of these obviously fall in there somewhere, but, not having some type of organizational structure around it other than the lowest PCI. I think also,
Well-
then leaves these disjointed pieces of future work that needs to be done.
May I? So, this is where it gets confusing. I was at the last meeting, there was a bit of conversation about the ranking system. And there was conversation even here about, well, and there's been feedback, and nobody needs to call anybody out, we don't need to do that. There has been, we would have been perfectly happy leaving it the way we presented it. But there was feedback even at the last meeting, well, didn't we do a PCI ranking, and why aren't we ranking them that way? We can forego this entire presentation if you call the vote and you want to. But there was some feedback that a simplified method showing the street rankings from worst to first. Because while mobilization is a factor, and all of those other things, to the point I think you've made here, mobilization is to a degree, okay, we're gonna start here. You're gonna have mobilization costs from neighborhood to neighborhood just the same. And I think that any good contract and any good construction firm is gonna recognize that if you're mobilizing in this neighborhood on this contract, you're gonna not try to charge us 5 different mobilization costs. So I think we presented this, but this was presented, or is being presented based on feedback from this group. And we didn't want to complicate this, so we put it in a very simple format, worst to first. And as Jeff was saying, you can pick a dollar amount that we can show and tally for you. You can jump around. That was one of the other things that folks said, what about streets over here? Because we felt trapped that if we picked this neighborhood, then some other streets somewhere else might not be selected. So we're providing this as a service to hopefully streamline this for you in a way based on the feedback we received. So I want to be clear, we didn't just do this to try to, we wanted to simplify it. And I think when he goes through this, you'll see that at the end, you have the ability to really make some very quick decisions on what you want. And I don't know how dispositive it will be ultimately, the degree of, grouping. I think after you tell us what, I know they're gonna go back and try to do the best they can in grouping with respect to logical neighborhoods and contract letting, so.
So just for clarification, and this is, I think, one of the things that the committee, and I don't want to speak for everybody, so if I'm wrong, I think we've had issues just trusting the data or what the real PCI was. So I think this is very helpful for that. And if this is just a data point to use to work towards maybe revising our rankings that we may have already done or something.
No, sir. So that's how the issue is. I'm so glad you're mentioning this, because I think it will clarify. This is maybe how it gets conflated. So if you go back, the original PCI that we did with the company was not what we thought it was going to produce for us. That's as much our fault as theirs. So I don't want to in any way convey that they didn't do the job we paid them for. Credit to Jeff and the rest of the team. They've gone out, they've taken the 2018 PCI. They've utilized their historical knowledge of roads that have had work done and otherwise. And they've even gone out and done a lot of driving in the streets to now compile this PCI index. We won't tell you it's the world's greatest, but we'll tell you it's about the best we can give you, and it has a certain degree of validity to it. So we don't intend to re-rank this or reassign any rankings here. These are the rankings based on the factors that I just mentioned that Jeff and the team put together to try to update and get you as valid a ranking.
And I'm sorry if you misunderstood. I was talking about the rankings that we did as a
Okay,
committee.
understood.
Right.
So, but this is a good point. I want everybody to understand, they put some work into compiling these numbers. So you can feel somewhat secure in them.
There's also something to say too about when you group neighborhood projects, right? At the end of the day, the dollar amount, you're pretty much only able to do 2, 3, 4 neighborhoods in a bond. Doing it this way, you're able to touch more of the community, and it doesn't mean that you can't do panel replacements in some of those neighborhoods that you would otherwise have done a neighborhood project. Because in some cases, when we do a neighborhood project, the entire neighborhood isn't terrible. It's probably 1 or 2 streets in that neighborhood that's awful. We can come back and do panel replacements somewhere else. So it's also looking about it that way. There's pros and cons to doing either or, but that's just something that you.
So, continuing,
Jeff,
there is a,
could you go back to the lowest ranking?
Bobby Lane would be.
No, I'm looking at Lakeview Circle, which is the 4th one down.
yeah, Lakeview Circle.
PCI.
Mhm. I've been on Lakeview Circle, it's pretty bad.
I have also been on Lakeview Circle. It's not cement, it's all asphalt.
Yeah, hard edges.
So it's in good condition. So I don't understand the
That was just over.
14 ranking, unless you wanted to make it cement.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different street.
So,
There is over by Mark Lane, there is a
Correct.
street, and I thought it was
it's a horseshoe off of Mark Lane.
concrete, and
It's asphalt.
there might be some asphalt overlay, but there's also some concrete that's been falling for years. And that's why that's how this.
That's the one that has bar ditches, right? It's asphalt
Right.
with culverts and.
There's no actual storm drain.
There's no storm drainage or.
So it's an unimproved roadway. It's basically a country road in the middle of a neighborhood. So it depends on your perspective. If you're talking about the actual driving condition of the road, it may not be the worst, but in terms of the actual road itself, it's insufficient for being a neighborhood street. So maybe that had something to do with the PCI link.
Okay, so I would be raising the question with regard to spending $2.5 million on that street when it's under
Well,
condition.
When I get finished, we're gonna go through these lists. You can, that one doesn't have to be included.
If, last thing, I'm trying to shut up, I really didn't want to talk. That's the beauty of how we did it this way.
It's not working.
Because certainly you may have a completely different view, notwithstanding our efforts to make this PCI valid ranking. And you don't have to go from here to here. You could very well substitute it so they're prepared. Once he's done, they'll be able to pull up a spreadsheet and you can say, you know what, as a group, we don't want that street for whatever the reasons, and go from that
Okay,
point.
I'm not raising the question with regard to that particular condition. I'm raising the question with regard to choosing to recommend it by the neighborhood rather than by the individual street. Because each street has a varying condition based upon whether or not it can be replaced with panels, or whether the curbing is a problem with the intersection of another street. Like, for example, Lakeview Circle does intersect with Mark, and I didn't see any problems there with that particular intersection, although I could give you a couple of others, where it is not the street that is the problem, it is the intersection. Oftentimes because of cars or trucks driving over the curbing. So my question is, with regard to having to replace the entire street because the intersection curbing is broken. For example, there are other questions also.
I think that point is something we can answer. I don't know.
You
The
know,
question appears to be, do we have to replace the entire street if it's the intersection that's in need of repair?
Okay. The only thing is, having seen this and deliberately gone out in order to see what the conditions were on streets that were recommended for reconditioning or rebuilding, I'm curious about having to go back to 2018 PCI recommendations, and rather than being able to question whether or not I want to spend the city wants to spend $2.5 million to rebuild the street, or simply take care of the intersection. You know,
I think that's why this has
Just, I don't know if you
happened.
could maybe better address.
I'm apparently not as familiar as I thought I was with this particular one.
I think you are.
Because the street I recall was concrete and spalling.
It's a blacktop road,
Maybe.
but it doesn't look like asphalt anymore. It's been so damaged.
Okay, and it was in very bad condition when I was on it. There's also a cul-de-sac that comes off of it. It is also has the same name to it, Lakeview something, and it too was bad. If we did not really look at intersections. When I guess I don't know how we need to take the recommendation from the committee. I do know that once we get into design, the details fall out. I'm not gonna pick Lakeview Circle, but any one of these streets, if we go out and survey it and decide that, it only needs to be reconstructed from here to here, that's what we will design. And the rest of it can be handle replacement. We'll turn it over to that group. But in terms of an actual intersection, I don't know we haven't really looked at intersections as a entity.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we go through the presentation? Because I know that several folks have gone out and looked at some of these streets from the list on their own. And if there's specific questions, or we want to have questions between the streets or line on certain streets, we can do that. But let's
Yeah.
go through this first.
I know one of the very first meetings we had on this, we talked about rooftops on these particular streets. So we can get some idea of maybe what kind of volume there is, whether it's a thoroughfare or, you know, a 28 circle.
Well, that,
Allows-
I think the presentation will answer that.
Yeah, these are mostly residential streets.
But let's go through the presentation because you're gonna see some of these things.
So, here is a collector. This does not have necessarily a lot of rooftops associated with it, but this is a street that is asphalt that we felt, due to the development patterns on this street now, the new fire station and some new development, that we thought that this was a collector that could be reconstructed as a standard concrete street. And then we are also recommending the committee consider the design of Cheeseville Road, not the construction at this point, because it is a long and it is an arterial street, so it'll be expensive. I don't think there's enough bonding capacity in this bond, but we're looking at $2 million design cost based on the estimated construction cost, and using a design fee of 10%. Then we have the alleys. These are the alleys pictured across the city, and here is the list of the alleys. Total for these alleys is about $30 million. Then, of course, there are the signal cabinet replacements. There are, I think, 27 of them, yes, 27 across it. These are intersection improvements, but they're specific cabinet replacements for the signals. And that totals about $3.8 million. We also wanted to make sure we included the panel replacements. We talked with Public Works. They have divided it up into, the city divided up into districts. They have a number of locations per district, totaling about 26 million. We are recommending 6 million for the 3 years that the bond is covering. And just FYI, we spent $1.5 million this last fiscal year. Then there are some gap connections, sidewalk gaps, where sidewalks are missing, and these they vary across the city. The pictures here are really for information only. They're not meant to be specific projects. There may also be some arterial and collector locations, but the Public Works group has compiled a list from various sources to know where these gaps exist. They are estimating a total amount of about $2 million. We are recommending to bond about $500,000.
Is this new?
This is a new category, yes it is. Another new category is screening wall rehabilitations. There are several green walls, neighborhood walls that the city has inherited by various means. HOAs disappear, dry up and disappear. They may have been dedicated at a time when it was not realized that that was not an appropriate thing to do. Whatever the case may be, there are several locations around the city. There is a routine maintenance repair contract that we use, but there are some walls, there's 4 listed there, that really require some complete reconstruction or some major repair to them. Quite a high dollar amounts, and they total about $500,000. So again, we are recommending $500,000 for that. And then another way to look at this program, the CIP program, is by category. So we presented this these capital improvement projects in a category fashion. The committee is welcome to look at this and maybe consider funding categories rather than picking streets, but that's something we wanted to leave up to you. And that really does conclude the presentation. I'll just note that if we considered everything that needed to be done, there would be just under $130 million worth of work.
I need to go buy some lottery tickets.
Okay, so
So I'm assuming we're gonna get new ranking spreadsheets to come out.
no, it's if you decide to look at the categories, we can look at the categories tonight and decide on those. Or we can look at the streets, a combination of, do you want some panel replacement, the signal cabinets, and then choose these streets all, plus there's parks, don't forget, and fire, all totaling $63 million.
So in previous meetings, we had said we were going to allocate, we were gonna pick the fire one. And then we had already thought,
16.3.
coming to a decision on what we were gonna do for the parks, which left us with,
42.
thank you.
I think you wanted to revisit that briefly, just to, and that's one of the items on the agenda, to make sure that's where you guys are with that.
We can. I think what we're looking at, though, is on the previous ranking, what we had been ranking individual streets, some categories like signal box replacement, and the completion of the 3 projects that are already existing. We have some new categories now. So I think what I'd like to put out to the committee, the task force, is do we want to switch gears and rank them by groups? With that being said, what would happen is we'd say, okay, we want the cabinets, we want the 3 streets that already need funding, we want the wall reconstruction. That leaves us with X amount of dollars. And then we say, and to staff, you allocate this money to the streets and alleys that you think are best.
It doesn't mean that y'all don't have to do both. I mean, y'all, and what I mean by that is y'all could rank the neighborhood projects and or the streets and present that to council to choose. I mean, because ultimately, I don't know what council is going to be thinking on the strategy. There are 2 methods of thought on it. It wouldn't necessarily hurt to have both of those presented to see if you were going to do neighborhood streets or neighborhood grouping, here would be our recommendation. If you're going to do based on PCI alone, here would be our recommendation. Yeah.
Do we have the results, or
Yeah.
We do.
can we see what they are? Or,
I think apples and oranges.
I wasn't prepared to do that, but I think I can.
Brian, you had a question. Mike.
Well, I'm not sure, I mean, I analyzed mine all the way through to the last dollar. And I used that, but I looked at the quadrants, then I looked at the lowest PCIs within the quadrants for streets. And so I assigned those areas that had the lowest PCIs, and then supporting alleys in those areas with the lowest PCIs. So it's a hybrid of kind of what we're talking about. I did suggest starting at the $42 million figure, the panels, the programs in flight, the signal cabinets. I think it's bad use of bond funds to finance long-term finance design. So I did not suggest that. It should be brick and mortar. in my mind. And so there were two sections, S9 and S10, that took up about 19 million, and then supporting alleys took up the rest, and I came up with 18,000 left.
So we don't, there would be no general fund capacity to finance design for these projects. It wouldn't exist. So that would have to be something taken into consideration. These things, the design has to be grouped in, otherwise we won't get half of this stuff done. When I looked at when you combine the screening wall, sidewalk mapping, panel placement, signal cabinets that was in this presentation, that's about roughly $10.8 million. You could say that the rest, minus parks and public safety, would be the capacity for streets, alleys, and other infrastructure. I don't know where y'all are at on the parks and public safety, but that could be the thought. I mean, minus all of those, here's your capacity left to do streets, alleys.
That's kind of what we had done. We had already selected the recommended option. We hadn't voted on it, but.
Yeah. And I'll tell you,
For public safety.
yeah, I would, going through this exercise, you always look at the final number and how much you have in capacity for the streets and alleys. And it's normal to go back and say, well, we need to tighten our belt a little bit more on the other stuff, because you just don't have as much money as you thought you would have.
Well, and I think when we did the parks was, we had set a cap on that. We went through the projects and included that and did some of the ground. Honestly, with the amount of time that we have and the work that needs to be done, we can go back and revisit that if we need to find a little bit of money here, but I'd rather not go back and rework what's already been worked. So this was the cumulative ranking?
Yeah.
From everybody? Yeah. That's cumulative from everybody? That's all,
Yes.
Nice to,
No.
So yeah, it doesn't necessarily hurt to present both options to the council. If you were gonna do grouping, here's what our recommendation is, and if you're gonna do based on PCI, individual streets, worst, best, here would be our recommendations. It at least gives us good options. Just my thought.
so the new things that were presented tonight were the privacy walls that have sidewalk gaps and a half, I think,
Panel placements and signal cabinets, but that total is.
Um,
Well, I'm just saying, if you were to take those non-street, items, it'd be $10.8 million.
So, looking at the initial rankings that were submitted by the task force, the signal cabinet installation came in at number one.
only makes sense, as it affects everybody, that's.
Yeah.
The panel replacement was number two. The construction fund for designated for design projects was number three. So with the new variables in, if this is an assumption, and we don't have to go by hook, just something to throw out there. That if we have privacy wall replacement, sidewalk gaps, that's $1 million. If we decide that's okay to do that as a standalone, then we have our rankings down below. But I think, are we, is there anybody who doesn't agree with at least the top 3 rankings?
Based on the results, I'd say no.
Okay.
So Eric,
Don't disagree.
so that's about, well, what's up above the top 3, those signals, the panels, and those streets that are already designed. That's about 17.5 million. If we put the other $1 million for the additional things that came up today, the sidewalk gap, and the screen walls, then that's 18.5 million of the 42 million that was left after we tentatively funded 16.3 for parks and recs and 4.7 for fire. Right? So that's what we're looking at right now, is the difference there. Well, we had 42 million, and we need to take the 18.5 from that. If that's kind of the direction and the thought process that we're going through.
We get a total of 6 projects, and you have 48 million. Freedom Road projects, 3 plus 3, and then the first 3. Breaking down the breakdown.
But that doesn't include the arterial street design, correct?
Well, that's, she said 3.
Yeah, that's in there.
It actually came in 1 and 2.
Wait, I'm sorry. So, Elise, say that again? That 2
So
million?
I didn't see the 2 million on this staple sheet, but it is on the single sheet, I just promised.
Well,
It's
so,
under
It's
the
on- it's on the
street reconstruction groups, it's number 1 and 2, or S12 and S11.
so one thing to remember when you're looking at these 2 is this was the choice on the ranking of the streets. This was the choice on the ranking in the alleys, so it's not
They're
cumulative.
Yeah.
So are we saying that, are we saying that we basically have 20? If we go in the thought process that we were using a moment ago, we basically have $23.5 million left to fund streets and alleys.
If that's the process we choose to go.
Right, okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands.
But I can keep looking
that.
at you, Brian, because you're the
Yeah.
numbers guy.
But given your point in theory, you could take the top couple of streets and then a couple of top alleys, not necessarily all streets or alleys. You could make a combination.
Correct. Because even on the top 3 street projects, after we assume we'll take off the top 3 other projects with the privacy panels and the sidewalk gaps.
You're 43 million.
Yeah,
Percentages 1 through 6 are 43 million. No others.
so what I think you do is you have to, well, because you've got 7.3 and 16.4. So that doesn't mean though that Lakeview Meadow Estates 1 and 2 is 16.4. If we defer on that one to pick up more alleys or, less Boston streets, we can do that as well. I mean, that.
What do you mean less costly streets, I'm sorry?
Well, Lakeview Meadow Estates by itself is the single most costly project in the state.
Right.
What I'm saying is, if we decide, we can decide not to do Lakeview Meadow Estates and leave us more capacity to pick up.
Or you could pick a couple streets in the Lakeview Meadow Estates and do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm saying there's this other list here that if the grouping is going to be too restrictive, where we're only able to do 2 neighborhoods at a time, I mean, that's where you have to start being creative with.
I honestly, I'm almost to the point where we have separate categories, okay? So we have the top 3, then we have we have streets, whether it's listed this way or by neighborhood, and we have alleys, whether it's listed grouped or by neighborhoods. I'm not an engineer. I almost say we rank the categories, and that's what staff and project managers and public works and everybody else, that's their job. Although I would like to go out and champion specific streets or neighborhoods.
I'm so glad you said that, because honestly, that makes everybody's jobs, including staff and here, easier, and this is the way that most cities actually do their bonds, is they don't call out individual streets. Rather, they allocate a tranche of money to the specific, we're gonna do this much going to streets, this much going to alleys, this much going to panel replacements. It's staff's job, our engineers, our professionals, to then go and look and study and determine, okay, what roads are actually the worst, and that's what we're going to do. What makes sense, engineering-wise, fiscally, all of those things, and then they go and do it. That's how pretty much every city does
And
it.
I agree, and there's a lot of us who went out and did a lot of homework. And looked at these roads and stuff. And you know what? If I was an engineer, I wouldn't be sitting here. That's what we have staff. So what we didn't break out in a category by itself, but they happen to fall there anyways, was the arterial roads. And this is me, just speaking for me. I would rather go, we've agreed we want the signal cabinet replacements, panel replacements, streets design completed. We had 2 new categories thrown in tonight. If we want to say, okay, we think those are a priority, and then whatever the capacity is after that, staff, do what you think needs to be done.
Oh, I definitely think if we're gonna go ahead and do that, we need to include Shisa and Schwab.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that was the arterial feed is its own category.
Yeah, you have arterials,
It is broken down.
I'm just talking about Los Gildas. As far as what we rent.
you have arterials, streets, alleys. That would be where you allocate the funding to, and then staff would, once the bonds are issued, or before the bonds are issued, would go and actually determine which of those streets to prioritize.
Because those streets could get worse between now and the time that we actually
Never
start
know.
working on it. Look at Strady and the way that it's deteriorated over the last 2 weeks.
Right. The thing is we've for some reason, 2015 created this precedent of that I hope we can break, that we need to list every single street and alley on this list. This is not really the best way to do business. So I actually hope there is some serious consideration into doing it the way that really should be done, in my opinion.
The last thing to offer to, excuse me, is for this committee to remember, even though staff will bring a professional analysis and all of those things, ultimately, the city council makes the final decision to approve that contract in the village streets.
And better believe I'll be driving those streets too to make sure we're not throwing money at a couple of panel replacements.
So Brian, I was looking at the top 5. I was looking at the top 5 if we include Shisa and Trady, the arterials. And not Lakeview, I was looking at 26.6.
26.64.
Close.
You were close.
26.54. And what was our
to get to 42, so you're at 15 and a half.
And then we can decide if we want to throw in the sidewalks and the walls, that'd be 27, 154. And then we just say, you know, staff can figure out what to do with the rest.
You want a motion?
We're just discussing right now. I mean, it's kind of, we're doing a little bit of a change of direction here mid-motion, so.
Well, I personally am a big advocate for the screening wall rehabilitation, anytime that we can put money to that, because that to me, I mean, I drive through here and it's horrendous. A lot of our screening walls just.
Well, we don't necessarily even have an option anyway.
Right.
It's either gonna come out of the general fund or it's gonna come out of the bond. I'd rather it come out of the bond and not general fund, so that we have more capacity to hire people and pay people more.
I do have a question about that. I know we have a certain general fund, we have a certain amount we allocate for alleys and streets and ways. Is there a certain amount that we have the general fund for?
I think 150,000 a year for wall rehabilitation. And that's to do what always happens, cars hit it, they fall down because they're so old and they've just given up. Those things happen throughout the year,
Patches.
and we don't have a choice but to go and fix them. It's not, we can just leave it broken. So,
Now, it's limited, it's not every wall.
yes.
So-
Right,
so, you know,
right, no, I understand. But, I mean, that's something that everybody sees, you know, I'm looking at it from a economic development standpoint, people who wanna move to this area, and you drive down the road and you see all the, yeah. I mean, it's bad enough that we've got Rowlett Road don't even get me started on that.
Every other expense in the world.
Yeah, some are leaning this way and that way, so.
I think it's a good idea.
Me too.
I agree.
Our general fund would appreciate it.
I'm sorry, what were we agreeing to? I was agreeing to the methodology that we were discussing.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought you were agreeing to, John.
I agree Eric, I agree to the methodology and the suggestions, more particularly with regard to Lakeview Meadows estates being deleted, but I'm a strong advocate for sidewalks. And the amount that was proposed was $500,000, but there was $900,000 of sidewalks in terms of the projects, as you outlined, Jeff. I would like to include the full amount of $900,000 for that. I don't see any reason not to do that, particularly if we're going to be rebuilding wall.
Are those, that's just gaps, that's to
Yes.
connect one to the
Where you-
next, not for sidewalk repair.
Correct. That's where you're walking down the street and all of a sudden there's
Sidewalk ends.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the intent by the side, and I think I brought it up, was to focus more on your arterial thoroughfares, Lakeview Parkway, Rowlett Road, those areas that where you have commercial businesses that have come in, put a sidewalk in front of their business, and also a sidewalk there.
So did that 900,000, was that primarily focused on that, or was that any place we have a gap within the city?
That is pretty much where there are gaps. And like I said, the Public Works crew has a running list that has different sources.
So 900 may actually be higher than at least what I'm thinking in terms of your major arterials, thoroughfares that have those gaps, that those are the ones that I think we were wanting to have connected. Neighborhoods, you know, it's not as big of a priority because there's not as much vehicular traffic in a neighborhood as there is on a major arterial or connector street,
So
where you definitely want a sidewalk.
So, yeah, safety.
Right.
That sounds reasonable, Mayor. On the other hand, there are streets lined with pickups.
That's an arterial.
There's a great deal of traffic on it.
Yes.
And
So-
those need sidewalks.
That's an arterial.
That's included in the $500,000 amount.
But that's, I don't think that's it depends on what side of Hickox. If you're talking about the Bardage side of Hickox, that would be that wouldn't be a filling a gap. That would be actually an entire,
That section of paper.
Well, not only that, but because Hickox does have Bardage,
you can't just,
it's hard to put a sidewalk, and when Hickox is a future project, it's on COG's radar as well. When it is rebuilt, it will include sidewalks.
I think it's safe to say on roads like Lakeview Circle that we were talking about earlier, that's asphalt, no sidewalks, no drainage, we're not gonna put sidewalks there. It would be existing area where concrete road curving is.
I would advocate we just take the sidewalk piece out of our assessment and throw it to the city bucket. So we only have the 8 top 5, the 2 major arterials and the 3 top projects, and leave the rest. They want to do sidewalks around.
So you're saying just the remaining money would be put down to do streets, alleys, and sidewalks?
yes.
Because the sidewalks are late to the game in my opinion. And I'm pro sidewalk, but they're late to the game.
I don't
know what that means.
I don't,
Well, it's just like the street walls.
we're not being very intentful in that regard. If we're just, because you throw money at the wall, somebody's going to get it where you didn't intend to go. So if we're wanting to be intentful or purposeful in where we're allocating money in a more general but less broad sense, if that makes any sense, you would just allocate to sidewalk gaps and then let staff determine those specific projects.
Technically, the wording on the bond is general enough. For a reason that it says for the improvement of streets,
Right.
sidewalks, alleys, etc. It's the intent of the council and staff for that money to be allocated where the recommendations were made, but there's nothing legally that says.
Legally, no, I mean, the fact is that the proposition language is probably just going to say streets, alleys, and maintenance related projects, right? But what we're here to do is to, under that, not a part of the prop, but under that, say, here's where we're prioritizing. Here's what we want to see. Otherwise, there's really no direction on where to go.
So you're saying sidewalk gap connections on major thoroughfares?
Well, you can't put that in the language, but you can put that recommendation to council, the reason that you'd like to see that go. I mean, literally the bond, what's it?
Well, I understand.
With the exception of the 3 categories, they can spend it on whatever street project they wanted.
Well, I do like the overall wording of the CIP improvements. It would be, to me, it would make sense to just say how much money we want to go into each one of these categories and leave it at that.
Right.
And if Jeff says, you know what, I really want 0.9 million for sidewalk gaps, and he gets the votes, then let's do that. I think that we can look at those things. Like you said, we can say, yes, we want this much to go into alley reconstruction, which you know is important to me. But I think we can all get together and decide how much money we want to go into each category. Yeah.
That, I mean, you're saying, okay, here's the amount of money, but without giving some prioritization of the project, you're saying, throw this amount of money at it. And we get big, the people that, roads and alleys, we would never have prioritized. It's like you getting a credit card to a teenager.
Jeff.
And say, here's all the things you're supposed to buy on Christmas list.
Council decides.
Yeah, ultimately, it does come to council for a vote, and we will analyze the data and determine whether, according to the PCI, is this really deserving of this money, or is there another project that's in worse shape? And then we get to vote and say yes or no. I can't imagine that staff would bring something to us that wasn't worthy of the funding to be spent on. that would be a good day for staff. So I think this is about just being more efficient, especially given that we're not where we're supposed to be anyway at this point. I mean, by now we would have had all this done. We would have had a great PCI that would have informed us on where to go, and we wouldn't have spent all this time and effort based on partially reliable data. So I think going with the direction of we're going to allocate this much money to this category allows staff to actually have enough time to get better data, better information from professionals to rank those. That's just my opinion.
And I think before we do that, you know, we all kind of have a good idea that we want the top 3 or 5 items on this particular list. Plus the line for sidewalk caps and screening. But we don't necessarily know the 47 million is save the
Well, we can, and we're going to, we should. But if we look, even, so it's $27.5 million are those things that we read, the top ones here, plus sidewalks and the screen. That's $27.5 million, which leaves, you know, $100 million of unfunded street and alley projects still to be done. So even if we go with this methodology, we say, okay, we are going to leave it up to staff with this amount of money that's left over to determine what alleys and streets, it's going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what.
That's why I usually go back and look at the bigger picture on what you know, are there, forgive me, but are there parks projects that could wait or could be funded out of general fund? Are there do we allocate as much money to fire station renovation, or does he have to do just a little less?
Well,
I mean, those are questions you have to ask.
And those are good questions, because some of those, even though when you talk fire department and, you know, the public safety one, but some of those items, like in the fire department, weren't public safety issues. They're
Not necessarily.
creating comforts for
Yeah.
firefighters, so.
FF&E
We've
kind
got-
of thing.
I'm sorry?
FF&E kind of thing.
Right. So I mean, we may very well be able to put a little bit more to the streets and alleyways.
we might be able to,
Yeah.
but I think as a percentage of the bond, we kind of capped. And I don't think, you know, I think the park stuff alone, what we could spend on parks was huge to what we actually
And
had determined to allocate.
did the parks, what y'all ranked, or what y'all wanted to allocate to parks, did that include City Point?
I would have to go back and look.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, I'm off base, forgive me, that's gonna be the next topic.
That's fine. So I guess the question here, and we can table it, or we can bring it up, do we want to go switch to a method of recommending the categories, single camera replacements, panel replacements, streets design that need funding for construction, and then the 2 arterials, which would be Chisa Road design and Trading Road. We had the sidewalk gaps, we had the screening, so we're looking at 27.5 million. And then say the balance, leave up to the discretion of city to determine what streets and alleys with that remaining balance are mostly replacement.
That's reasonable.
Based on council approval. I want to take that.
And we still have issues left, so if you want to refine this more, we can. I'm just looking for a general guideline to follow now.
I think we all pretty much agree with it.
I mean, with the exception of the add-ins, the only thing we're changing, we're not picking individual streets. And we're adding in two things that we're presenting tonight.
I do have a couple of questions on, Cheeser Road, that 2 million is just for the design on tree, where the 7.3 million,
That's for construction.
that's just construction. Is that
Construction
all-
and design.
And design.
And design, okay.
To completion.
So with Cheeser Road design, that 2 million is based on,
$19 million.
10%.
$19 million is the total project cost.
Roughly 10%.
again, economy of scale, I'm just wondering, I mean, if, if we've got design in the 7.3 for Shady, is it possible to do, one,
Design for.
do you get economy of scale of doing design for both, basically? I don't know, I'm just thinking about that maybe.
Not really, because they're not together, they're not related. Other than the intersection.
Well, I think the proposal for Schrady is to keep it 2 lanes but concrete
Right.
and add,
Right.
It's gonna be quite a different
She
system.
says 4 lanes, right?
And
It's
with
a 4-lane divided, it's an arterial, Shady is more of a secondary.
and she's will be in years of right away position.
And
Everybody else is public.
does that include the drainage stuff?
Yes, you
As well,
you have to do that.
And then the only other question that I had on the signal cabinet installation, will that allow us, as we move forward, to retime the lights? I know that's been a big,
Much easier. We can retime them now, but it's, pulling out the floppy disk and reprogramming them. As where with the new technology, you can do it off base somewhere else. You can do it on your phone.
Okay. but these new cabinets will have that
Yes.
Latest
Yeah,
version.
state of the art.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, but is that all? It's not all the cabinets.
27.
Most.
And how many do we have citywide? Do you have any idea? I mean, is that a
30.
third of them? A
2.
32? So the other 5,
They're all on them, right?
Yeah.
They're newer.
the other 5 have that same capability. So those 27 cabinets will bring everything up to current technology standards where you can program.
I don't have that information handy, I'll have to find that out.
The only reason that I ask is because if we're only talking 5 more cabinets, I mean, I know that's still a lot of money, because it was, $140,000 per cabinet, right?
Roughly.
I
You're
mean,
not wrong. I mean, that's a great question.
I mean, why wouldn't we do all of them?
Well, so to go back to the list, I'm just off the top of my head thinking about Lakeview Parkway and Download. Those cabinets will be replaced part of the structure.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're getting a whole new signal system. Even new lights, new poles, all that.
Right. So is that one of the 5, the other one of the 5, I guess?
Well, it's on the list here,
Okay.
but that, because it was on the list before.
You could just reallocate that cabinet to.
Yeah, I mean, I would just make, my recommendation would be to just look at that in terms of, can we get all of them in here, as opposed to just 27. And then switch
I would
27.
have to go to my staff and see exactly how many we do have across the city.
Okay.
What ones are not.
And they could take into account ones that are going to be replaced anyways,
Right.
because of major projects now.
Right.
And then they can probably add, I don't know, at Bayside and.
Well, that's not on here, but those are
text dots.
Those are gonna be new signals, that's right.
You're talking about the signals at the
bridge.
The bridge, that's text dot.
No, I'm talking about the one that already existed.
Oh, that's one of the newer ones, but.
That's what I'm saying.
Sunset.
That one,
That's
is that
ours.
what you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fairly new, that's very new.
So
And
if we could just get a count of the missing 5, how many of those are missing because they're new or new?
Well, it's all about, can the technology speak to each other?
Right.
Is it all in one system, or are you having to, is it 2 different ways to manage them, and why would they do that?
Right.
So,
So, I don't know, do we just make a motion to change our methodology and agree that we're gonna take those 6, add the million and leave the rest,
I
or
don't think you need a motion, it's just really a
just we're
consensus.
gonna agree on consensus, and that's the direction we're in? Okay.
Is staff going to
It
have,
would be nice, so we have it for the record.
Okay.
So we
is
can
there gonna
verbalize
be
this
general
clarity.
instructions? Are we gonna provide that or like preference, or is it just like up to them?
Well,
Discretion.
I think with the exception of the signal cabinets, and I can turn it over motion, too, we can discuss the motion. Make a motion to recommend,
The chair can't make the motion.
Right,
oh,
but I'll make a motion
Repeat after him.
to recommend, signal cabinets, panel replacement, construction fund for design projects, Sheets Road design and Trady Road improvement.
Did that include screening wall repair?
Yeah, still, they're just doing. Let's look, screening wall rehabilitation and sidewalk cap connections.
any
For a total of 27.5.
any discussion on that recommendation,
Oh, okay. Well, on that one.
on the motion?
I second the motion.
You, well, did you,
Did you second it, or was it discussion?
no, I,
No. I have discussion, but not about these particular things. It's the next
We'll discuss.
topic.
yeah, but it, okay, all right. Seconded by Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed?
You oppose it?
Ron opposed, abstentions? Okay, motion passes.
I think so. That motion is to, as presented on this payment, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, okay.
All right. Well, we're gonna go on to Parks and Rec tonight, so if you have any more
No, okay.
discussion, okay.
Carry on. So that is all those projects, but not the streets.
No, seriously.
None of the streets, yeah, we have, you got, I just wanted to point out, you haven't made any decisions on how to rank the streets.
We would have to do a second motion on that.
That was my position.
Do a second motion, or
Well,
we're not including that?
I would think that in that motion, we would want to have a dollar value associated with streets and dollar value with alleys, allowing the city to go ahead and
Yes.
conduct them, you know.
Yes.
So in order for us to have that dollar value, you know, I think we need to go back and revisit parks and recs
I agree.
and safety.
I think that's a good idea. You can go back to your items.
That's fine.
Table this item.
Yeah.
So let's table it for now, to figure out the amount, and then we can come back to it. Next agenda item was review and ratify Parks and Rec projects. Can I amend an agenda item?
The language is the language of what's posted. That would be nice, though. I'd be using that all the time.
Well, I'm just thinking, it would be nice to do the public safety and the park homes together tonight if we're discussing it.
It's posted, you can. It's supposed to, we've said that these are the topics we're discussing, and so we're discussing those topics.
Well, we can
For
bring
the
that
record,
under.
Mr. Chair, I recommend you mention that you're going to discuss both of them at the same time.
Okay, what we could do too is take that as 3, and then the next, agenda item 4 is more general, and I will announce that we're gonna set public safety as well.
Was that the total or was that?
This was the original presentation.
What was the
16.3
Yeah,
was the dollar.
The 16.3, does that not include five public safety as well?
No.
No.
Back.
I think I have
You do?
a thing. We want to,
I,
we want to add this up to what we want to read.
We just walked down until we got to.
Well, I have marked wet zone, kids kingdom,
right.
community center for the gym, interior improvements.
Wait. Community center for the gym.
The
RCC additional waste? That
Floor
would-
No,
Was
no,
that-
no, no,
Number
just
six,
the,
Holly Community
Yeah.
Center Gym.
Oh,
the gym
okay.
thing. The kayak docks, erosion control. That's it. Does that give us 16?
Did you say
I
City
don't think
Point?
so.
Every,
At how much?
parts facilities.
5 million?
Which you did much.
That's all I had marked.
Can you list those again?
I'm sorry. Wet zone,
Number 4 on that list of the one.
kids kingdom,
Right.
2.5. Number 6, community center gym A,
Okay.
kayak and docks. Erosion control. And that's where my notes end.
Maintenance facility was number 2 on our matrix.
That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That's number
So.
number
Jeff,
1, the
Jeff, go
community
ahead.
park facility. Yes.
It was 1 through 10, less the community park, $7 million. Where we got to 16.
That's the community park.
And that included the scenic City Park.
Yes.
Okay. David?
So. I was reading. So,
You want me to speak on scenic point?
well, you want me to?
No, I mean, I was going to again.
I serve with the pleasure.
I would,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, or David, please do
So-
speak, because I have strong feelings about this.
So, well, I think I might give y'all $5 million to put towards something else. So, talking today may have, I think we have a pretty good idea on what maybe the path forward on redoing City Point Park, and I don't think it needs to be funded out of the bond. I would say that we forego the $5 million for City Point Park. Let myself and staff talk about this idea that we have, and I think it's going to be feasible.
And I hate to interrupt, but as we're talking, I don't think we opted for the $5 million option. I think we opted for, there was an alternative of just doing a, yeah, like a path.
Oh, I was hoping it's $5 million. That would be great. Now I'd have 5 extra minutes.
Well, it was gonna be, to do basically a straight concrete path along the,
Yeah.
along.
I'd say no money, no funding allocation to Scenic Point Park, period, out of the bond election. We have I don't want to talk, I can't say the idea because I need to go to my colleagues on council and not cut them off on this. So, I don't want to cut them off, so I'm just going to say that I think we have a much more feasible, financially smart, more smart idea on handling Scenic Point Park. That I would recommend strongly that we not allocate any funding towards Scenic Point Park. I think it's fine.
Can we get our cumulative rankings back up on for parks back up here?
Cumulative, right.
Yeah, so we had a spreadsheet that we had all ranked, but Thank you.
And these are the oh,
That's,
Just pass over here, little Jay.
okay.
oh, that's weird. Hey,
Oh,
That's Gail's only stuff around me.
All right, so if we take Scenic Point out, and does anybody recall from notes what we had said we were gonna allocate for parks as far as the capacity?
16.3.
That was just parks.
Yeah, it
right?
was 4.7 was for minor.
Well, 7 was a harder number, so it's back in.
So if we take Scenic Point out, where does that then move us at around 16 million? Or do we eat some of that surplus up and put it back into the roads and alley side as well? If there's something that really doesn't, we really don't think it's worthwhile.
Roads and alleys.
So I'm sorry, tell me one more time. Which ones we have decided on? So.
This was,
Going through what?
1 through 10 is what you said.
310 less 4 and less 7. Those two roads. Which is seen. Not 4 million, 4. Project 4 and roads.
so just to
310.
actually, or to
It's right now.
poorly
Looking
do
at
that.
the streets.
What we're talking about is wet zone, Kids Kingdom, community park facility improvements, erosion control, trail construction gap connections.
that's one.
No,
No, that's one thing.
that's 10. I mean, that's 11.
That's one.
I think you're looking at this list.
Yeah.
Okay, so community park facility improvements,
Yes,
Yes, Jim.
wet zone,
yes,
Yes.
parking lot improvements,
yes.
Yes.
I'm seeing,
Kids Kingdom renovation,
It's good.
community center gym A, kayak dock and launches, Shorewood Park, erosion control, and if we wanted to get there, depending on how we're going to allocate the next two, that would be trail construction, gaps, and trade blue line.
I'm sorry, can you put it community park, athletic, yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay, that's.
No,
No, we,
no, that's
Perfect.
seven.
I thought we just, we dropped seven, correct?
Correct.
oh, there's
Off,
a,
that's
That
total,
cost?
1 through 10 less 4 and 7 gives
Right,
us.
3,
One,
7.
that's right.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Oh, y'all didn't do, sorry. Community park athletic fields, y'all took that off.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Which is how much?
Like,
How much was it allocated to the erosion control?
3 million.
3. And what was that, was that just to kind of throw it in and see how much you can get done in 3?
just you scroll down on your calculations for your erosion control.
Those were,
It's number 10.
Is it number 10?
I haven't tested.
Oh,
Yeah, item 10, no, slide 10.
So I would, again, Scenic Point Park, no, not needed.
Well, but part of that, when we look at that, is of the 3 million, what percentage of that 3 million was Cedar Point Park? Was that the majority of that? Was that half of that, a third of
Yeah, I
that?
understand that, I mean,
Originally, it came in as 1 million apiece.
so, I mean, I was gonna say, you put $1 million into the streets, alleys, out of erosion, I mean,
Well, but what I'm saying is, so when we reevaluate these, if we just say 1 million each, we just drop that to 2 million instead of 3 million.
right.
Where we say 750 million, or 750,000, find out what we need to do. Plus, $1 million to start that.
I was gonna say 2 million, you could put to erosion control, put the extra $1 million into another.
I mean, yes.
Because 1 million is nothing to snuff at.
And I say go for 1.25 million. To alleys and streets. Because then, we need to have somebody who's competent to come in and look at what erosion.
I agree with that.
Line and
Check
how we can fix it.
I mean, the only of those three that's kind of urgent is Powell Point Park because it's used extensively. And the remediation needs to be done there, it's not the other side. Sure.
Yeah, but again, it's even what remediation, how remediation is.
We just want to drop that to 1 million and say for study and for emergency.
I would say 1.75,
Yeah, that's a good,
you know, for study and, you know, that's
because we know there are needs, we know that.
we just don't know what it is, how to, you know, what it's starting.
It dropped to what, 1.75?
1.75.
Scroll up on the bar, then don't click anything,
Yeah.
sort of.
So
Yes.
express just.
We just roll to
Take that. Take the total
Forest.
footage and back into it.
So parking lot improvements, that's a pretty significant
Billion
number.
is what's left. It takes
It was
the
a
point.
pretty significant.
Can you click on parking lot improvements?
Well, the numbers just came in as well. A million here, a million there. No, didn't, you know, when I said, wait a minute, you figure $1 million for 300
South
$1 million versus $1 million for 1,700. Okay. We need to spend some money on it.
Sorry, what do we?
Well, I'm just, that's a big number for parking lot.
Well, it's
So,
multiple
I mean-
locations, too.
Can Aaron speak to why it was 3 million?
Where's it?
Well, it's right, oh, erosion control?
Right now for the parking lot?
Oh, well, it's right here, I can see it. Says it right there. Breaks it out and just a big pill to swallow for parking.
Well, Springfield market, Walker, and it's a safety. Can you go back, I know you're trying to.
Well, you got 36 out there.
Okay. So. So if we reduce the erosion to 1.7.
1.75.
25 or 1.7?
1.75, it's even 1.25 for,
We were knock out Scenic Point completely. Anything else there that's on our list. Can't do anything about wet zone, can't do anything about Kids Kingdom. Facility improvements, that number's been out there for a long time. We looked at erosion control. So can I get some guidance? Are we deciding that if we reduce this and add the capacity, we're not gonna add additional parks, we're gonna allocate that back to streets and alleys?
Yeah. Sorry, say that one more time.
So if we're freeing up capacity on our previously grouped parks, we're not gonna add additional parks projects, we're gonna reallocate that recommendation to streets and alleys.
It's typically what you do when you get down to this wire.
So what I'm saying is we had 10 projects,
Right.
we're reducing that to 8.
Yeah.
That's it, okay.
Whichever one's, where you gonna reduce?
Yes.
Where's it from?
And scenic.
Scenic farm.
So you can see that part of control, pull from parks. Throw it out.
Well, but didn't y'all say that y'all didn't fund scenic point at 5 million, but it was rather,
No, let's see what the number,
Well, okay, so what is erosion control?
1.75.
What else has changed or?
Scenic points out completely. The other thing that changed, that's the only thing we changed on dollar amount.
So, can I run down this list?
Sure.
Here, wet zone, Kids Kingdom, community park, facility improvements, erosion control at 175, Rowlett Community Center, Gym A, parking lot improvements, all. Kayak docks and launches, and Shorewood Park improvements.
We had a top 10, we took out 2, so I don't think we. Yeah, Charlotte Park improvements, you're right.
did you say,
That's it, that's it.
did you say community park?
Community park facility improvements.
Okay.
Which is basically the maintenance.
Yeah. Makes,
Correct.
That's right, sure, park works, so.
There should be 8 projects.
Yes, there are. And that total.
What's your little numbers?
Fine. It's 1055. Which I think Brian should say. Brian said 6.25. I counted it's 575.
So,
Could you repeat, go through that one more time so we know?
Sure.
Please.
And I'm looking at this list, okay? So, wet zone, water park,
can you give me this?
1.5 million.
1.5.
Kids Kingdom renovations, 1.0 million. Community park facility improvements, 2 million. Erosion control, 1.75 million. Rowlett Community Center Gym A, 0.4 million. Parking lot improvements, 3 million. Kayak docks and launches, $500,000. Shorewood Park improvements, 0.4 million. I get 1055.
Which, if we take that, so we had originally said 16.3, originally it's a difference of 5.75.
there you go. That's a good number right there.
Okay, so, could we get a motion from somebody.
I'll make a motion that we.
That we're gonna recommend
That we recommend.
those projects.
Yeah, following projects in the following amounts. That is the wet zone, water park at 1.5 million, Kids Kingdom renovation at 1 million, community park facilities improvement at 2 million, erosion control at 1.75 million, Rowlett Community Center Gym Bay at 0.4 million, parking lot improvements at 3 million, kayak dock and launch at $500,000, Sherwood Park improvements at 400,000.
Just a break.
For a total of 10 million.
10 million and
10.55.
and 20 cents.
Did we say already?
Yeah, we got it.
So John made the motion, Richard second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the recommendation? Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion carries.
Excellent.
So I think we need another motion that,
What was the total first? It was 27 what?
Like 5.4,
27.
right, right.
21.
I'm sorry, the first 5 on this ranking list were 26.54,
27.
and we added another 1 million, or,
27.5.
right, 27.54.
That was at the $1 million for sidewalks, not the 900, not the 500.
let's move this money over and then we'll talk about it. Well, okay.
Well, do that first and then we go.
I'm sorry, that was still at the $500,000 mark. Half of it,
Yeah,
$500,000 for
as-
each.
Let's take them separate because
Essentially 20.
well, what I was gonna say was, do we need a motion to say these savings, we would like to move back to recommended?
Well, because we never made a motion.
We tabled it. We tabled it.
Well, we tabled it, what we're gonna do is streets and alleys, but what I'm saying is originally, we never committed to firmly giving a recommendation.
Okay, on the balance that was remaining outside of those 1/6 of the record. Any more discussion on Parks and Rec?
So, I'm sorry, so tell me what we're doing. So we have the 26.54 of the first 5 items. And then what did we say we're going to do with the other 2, the sidewalk gap and the screen wall?
We included those.
So we're going to include it. And did we,
At fully funded amounts, not at those.
So,
okay, and the fully funded
He
amount,
recommended the 900,000.
Yeah, we backed off.
I think I'm
We backed
for
off
as
on it. It
presented.
was half.
Yeah, we did as presented.
okay, so that's $1 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
It's 27.5.
27.5.
right. So now we're up to
33.29.
38.9,
Oh.
38.09.
So,
But really not.
agenda item number 4 was additional capital improvement projects. It could be included in the CIPTF 2044 bond projects. Has there been anything submitted that we know of on the website for any citizens who submitted ideas?
I'm taking a phone call. Or Barnum Road. It's a collector next to,
It's down by the vineyards,
so I did have a phone call on
College
that.
Park.
Yeah, it goes right next
Oh,
to,
yeah.
it goes right next to, Scruggs Park.
Yeah, Garner is that also between I think it's
Is it Garner the kind of the road that goes into?
so it's split by Chisa. So I think they're talking about between Stanford and Fuqua, because that is a unimproved bar ditch, same situation as Lakeview Circle, unimproved bar ditch, asphalt, blacktop there.
And that, so Lakeside makes the turn and turns into Garner, correct?
What's Lakeside?
CA Run from the park,
All right, so it goes,
CA
let's see.
Run, Sharp, yes.
But, I mean,
Which side of Gardner Road?
it would be the west side between Fuqua and Stanford. But according to our PCI, the previous PCI is 99.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it as the kind of parade from Dow Rock to Chisa.
Yeah.
So, I did have somebody.
Okay, so that's not on that side, not on the College Park side, but on the east side, she's
The west side.
The east side,
Oh, you're talking about
He's
that
talking
side.
about the east side.
the east side,
Scruggs
Scruggs Park.
Yeah,
Scruggs Park, and it's between Dow Rock and Chisa.
so that's gonna be unfavorable, because that's that's about a mile.
Well, so,
The question was there any additional projects from citizens to come in?
so my
I'd say-
ask would be that city consider that or put it in its list of potential roads for when we decide what money we're gonna allocate for streets and alleys, they put that into the consider.
Oh, please, somebody knows.
Tonight's did with Scott Street Alley.
Yep.
That is And I think I can go. But you know, it's actually good to provide with black and white. I do want to, since we're talking about other projects, I would like to look back at the amount that was allocated for public safety to see if we want to look at that figure again and perhaps allocate any of that money for other projects.
What was the total amount?
We look back,
4.7,
that was
4.7.
everything.
and that was for
That was all.
That was
every
everything.
street.
We came back to revise those.
Yeah. In, Bill,
So,
professional opinion?
God bless them if he can get all that done for 4.7.
Okay, that's what I need to
I
know.
mean,
I'm sorry, what was,
he asked if I thought, in my professional opinion, from a cost estimating standpoint, if, you know, what I thought about that. I said if Chief Howard can make it happen for 4.7, then I think, you know, good luck with that. Not to say that it can't be done, I'm just saying it's gonna take some creativity. I think the needs there appeared, from what I recall from the presentation, they appear to be much greater than the dollars available. You know, my recommendation would be that we don't make any changes, and I think there's a lot of compelling reasons not to. First and foremost is, you know, the condition, the deferred maintenance. You know, you mentioned, John, you said, you know, kind of creature comforts, but, you know, I don't think anybody wants to go to work every day, especially if you're actually, you know, kind of living there, you know, on your shift, because what do our firefighters do? Is it 3 days on, 4 off?
48.96.
Okay.
They used to be 24.48.
You know, you don't want to be looking at, you know, broken, you know,
Toilets.
broken cabinets and restrooms and, yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's horrendous conditions. So my recommendation would be that we don't defund any of what we had previously recommended.
So,
Obviously, I don't have a recommendation, nor do I wish one. I want to give information. You may or may not remember when Chief Howard spoke, and this isn't pro or con, by the way. He initially, 2 or 3 meetings ago, he had, and they were kind of just off the top of his head. But thereafter, he's got a construction manager that he works with. They went back, made several assessments. And so this is a number that has had some additional vetting and review and analysis. So whatever credibility that has or doesn't have or comfort it gives you, I just wanted to remind you that this wasn't any longer just Chief Howard's estimate, but in fact had been reviewed by someone else.
And
That number actually, I think, came down.
It did.
It was at
It did.
six, it
So,
was at 6.3.
because again, some of the pictures,
ask was five.
you know, in fairness to the photos and the other things, I think Chief Howard took a more comprehensive look
Right.
with his consultant, and that's how they arrived at that information.
Right.
So,
The initial ask was for the complete job was 5.75.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
he's
knew-
down $1 million.
Yeah, I knew that it came down, and I thought that was very creative, and however they were looking at that to get there, because we all know costs are, you know.
So I remember the revised ask for the full plan. Was there a revised ask for option 2? Does anybody recall that, if there's a dollar amount?
No, I think
Well,
we removed the options.
Option 2 is the
Through,
4.7.
you know, going back to the minutes. The committee decided to allocate 4.7 million for renovating
Okay.
stations, the 3 stations.
3 stations.
Now, it's an interesting appeal that you're making, but I don't buy into it.
Okay.
Particularly in as much as there was an outside evaluation to reach the 4.7 million.
Correct, but that 4.7 million was based on option, coming off of that option.
No, it was not. The manager,
no, man, it was a comprehensive review of what Chief thought needed to be done. So they went and they looked at things, because remember, his initial estimate, kind of included things like foundation work, which they went back and they later evaluated. You know, again, in fairness to Chief Howard, he's the fire chief. With his consultant, well, some of it wasn't necessarily foundational in nature, but maybe some other things. And so that's how you arrived at a significantly different number. And so, just want to make sure that we're clear with that.
Right, so, excuse me, so option 1 was to renovate, upgrade, or standardize each station, which included everything from option 2, which option 2 was HVAC installation. It was more, you know, kind of systems type thing, building systems. And then option 1 took it and added to it kitchen and bathroom remodel, including appliances, flooring, ceiling tile, energy efficiencies. And it also included that foundation repair. So what you're saying is from option 1, which included option 2, the 5.75, when Chief Howard had that evaluation, it then reduced it because they removed that foundation repair. And so it was the 4.7 that we came up with. So it was really it was the full scope that he asked for based on the reevaluation of the foundation and I think maybe some of the exterior painting.
That's my understanding.
Right,
Yeah.
that's my understanding.
That's my
I just want to
understanding.
make sure we're all on the same page.
He and I didn't go line item, but we did speak specifically about the change in things that were designated as foundation
Right.
issues and other things, and that is how they run.
Yeah, okay. Jeff, does that make sense, what you remember?
that's what I remember.
Yeah.
So interested. The outside consultant was used for the provide $4.7 million.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not going back to option 1 and 2, or to pull items from either one of those in order to plug it in.
I don't think she's saying
4.7 million.
No, I'm not saying,
She's saying not to
What are
reduce.
you saying?
I'm saying that option 1 originally was 5.75.
Okay,
And it included and incorporated everything from option 2. And when Chief Howard had the outside consultant validate the 5.75, they were able to remove the foundation repair component and I think also some of the exterior concrete and then tweak the rest of those numbers to arrive at the 4.7 revised number. So it's really still option 1 less the scope reduced based on the consultant's input to 4.7.
There was a professional opinion asked to Gail, and I think what she said is, she thinks it can be done, but it's gonna be tight. That
Right.
5.7.
Yes,
I,
yeah,
I think we're
They-
talking, I
that's-
think we're chasing our tail here.
Right.
I think we-
So I think the short thing is, do we want to revisit the ask from public safety this time? Fire, okay. So, that being said, I want to go back to agenda item 2, on review of streets and alleys. And so we made a recommendation by motion that passed to recommend, not going through all of them every time, but the 6 plus the screening walls and the alleys. Then we went back to parks and we reduced the allocation of parks, and we agreed that we weren't going to add additional parks projects to come up to that, which left us additional capacity then, bonding capacity of 5.75 million.
If, Mr. Chairman, so if I may, let me summarize where you're at. For for everything but the residential streets and alleys, you're at 27.54. The parks projects are 10.55, and the public safety is 4.7, which totals the
42.79.
how much?
42.79.
And I believe that leaves an amount of 20.2.
Okay, so going back to item 4, the recommendation for the motion, because we did not address streets and alleys, was at 20.2 million be recommended to be allocated for streets and alleys based on needs as determined by city staff and PCI agreements, whatever.
And that moves the 5.75.
That's including the 5.75.
Two streets, I was.
I can't make a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Ready? Go ahead.
Oh, no. Okay. Making the motion to move.
We're not,
Just the fund.
just to say that we're going to allocate 20 points.
20.2 million.
If you're gonna follow this format, can I request the committee to divide residential streets and alleys into 2 categories?
Well,
And for us to set that dollar amount?
Yes, please.
Oh. People actually.
I mean, but that was
What?
one of them kind of is at that point.
How does that benefit? I mean, just for my own notification. I mean, what's the?
Okay, we don't have to. We could do contracts that have both roads and alleys in them. Alleys are clearly a different animal. They cost, the unit cost is different. So, well, I don't know if it's higher. Alleys, they're smaller streets, including sidewalks, typically reconstructing.
What about an 8 points?
But it could be done
make a motion.
to do them in a single contract.
I don't know that this is,
Dividing that here.
yeah, no,
Okay.
I think that it would be difficult to separate those without actually going into the
I'm
details.
fine.
And so, I think if we're wanting to have staff, the experts actually, do the analysis and, then push it to council for a vote, I don't know that allocating a number to alleys and streets separated, is really gonna help you or, the process. That's just my.
I will follow it.
But if you're looking for a recommended ratio, 14 to say,
It's really hard, and if you're gonna do that, you almost have to just go ahead and go into the details.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
So. Okay, make a motion to, we allocate the remaining 20.2 million to the streets and alleys based on staff's recommendation based on county readings
With their method.
or their method
Determined.
determination.
We have a motion. Rongi? You have a second? Second from Richard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. So, back to, so that's done with agenda item 2. The next thing is discuss the need for a holiday schedule for the November and December meeting. We're currently so as far as November goes, and I hate to make it about me, but I'm making it about me. I'm agnostic for November because I probably won't be available any day you choose in November. So December, so go by whatever works best for Jeff. And y'all for November. When does council meet? November the 13th?
First and third Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday of the month.
So they'll be meeting the 6th and the 7th. So you can meet the 13th.
27th, that's after Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Or the 27th.
I mean, that's what we're currently scheduled, it's the 27th.
Why not? What's that?
27th? Okay.
Leaving it.
And then December, council will be meeting the 4th and 5th.
Is that right?
That's the first Monday and Tuesday, right?
Thought it was the 5th and 6th, but okay.
Or the-
For November, oh, for December.
December.
Oh, yeah, I won't be there, but yeah.
And
That's
then
true.
So that leaves us the 11th, the 18th, or the 25th.
I
Yeah,
won't,
if
I
we can
won't.
be allowed.
That's Christmas.
You sure you don't want to move to 25th?
Well, the only reason I would recommend maybe not doing the 11th and maybe doing the 18th is it's only 2 weeks before our November, between our November meeting and our December.
I mean, I won't be here on November, so.
I'm even
will
good.
council be meeting on the 18th?
18th.
That's
That's
Monday.
That's the
It's a work
It's the
session.
third Monday, it's
18th?
it's a work session.
It's a work session.
The 18th works for me, any of them works for me.
But that's a work session.
Oh, it's a work session on the 18th?
We could meet in the annex.
Or go back to the 11th.
What
It
time?
has to be a
It
Monday.
depends on what the agenda.
It doesn't matter.
Could we don't know the day besides Monday?
Yeah, it could be Monday. It could be Wednesday.
I was gonna say, can we talk about what the agenda looks like for November and what we can project it may look like for December?
Can we set the December meeting date
In November?
in November? I'm not sure, yeah.
You want to have two meetings back to back?
May not.
No.
I'm saying determine what day we're going to meet in December.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that'll probably,
Because that's gonna set the agenda. We need to figure out what we're gonna do for November agenda first.
It's basically pointing the recommendation to council,
Yeah, what we could do,
working on a presentation.
okay, is if we could get in just the bare bones on the presentation though, everything we discussed tonight, as far as the breakout of parts, dollar amounts, those 6 projects, dollar amounts, what we left, we could just do streets and alleys and rail. Yeah, but
Of course.
whatever. You know, I said, my, probably.
December meeting.
would, whatever, I'm sorry, I've probably asked this 500 times, so I'm gonna write it down this time, is fair, when are we being presented to council on this?
January.
Yeah, hoping to be. But it's either December, or January,
So they gotta call the election in February.
Yeah.
so you have to call them.
We can do it till December 18th,
Council, it's okay, council may just have to have special meetings, make it work.
or we can do it at their work session.
There shouldn't be any reason we can't make a January meeting to council, in the very first meeting. There really is, I mean, you've done most of your work here tonight.
Yeah.
So now it's refining
If it's going on, hey.
how you feel about it and working up the presentation for the care to present.
So will we be looking at our November meeting, will we be reviewing potentially like a draft of the presentation?
I would suggest not. The presentation is generally the purview of the chair. What we want to make sure is that we've got the content in terms of the recommendations that this body is going to make.
Mhm.
And so that's what we want to present to you at the next meeting, so you can kind of take one last look at it.
Right.
If you say okay with that, that really should be the extent of this. Now, again, the chairman can come back and say he wants to share his draft with you. That's a different conversation. We'll begin to start working up the presentation after you take that final look at it in November. So.
Sounds good.
Anything else for this evening? Any other comments? All right, yes. Richard.
I hate to keep everybody, but I do have one more thing. It's 3-0 Rangers at the top of the first.
Wow.
Nice.
How much first? Thank you.
Thank you for the update.
I do have something to add too. It's just a PSA. Early voting start today. Besides a city council position being open, there are 14 propositions and constitutional amendments. So please do your homework because they're important. You know, and don't get caught going in and just
Yes,
voting
yes,
for
yes.
one thing and leaving 14 others blank. So please go out and vote, let your voice be heard. And thank you. It's 7.